Good evening. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Wednesday, June 30th, 2021. And this is Livetalk Diaspora Forum. I'm Jonga Kandemiri.
And I'm Chris Gande.
We would like to inform our listeners that because of the coronavirus pandemic, tonight on the Diaspora Forum, we are not able to give you our usual show since we are broadcasting from our homes. However, we are going to talk about the growing coronavirus pandemic and other issues affecting Zimbabweans in the diaspora.
A live talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 909 medium wave frequency and on 4930 and 15460 kilohertz shortwave Monday through Friday at 8 p.m.
On the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com, www.voashona.com, and at www.voaindebele.com.
Thanks once again for joining us. You are listening to Studio 7 Live Talk. This evening, we are continuing our conversation about the coronavirus pandemic.
President Emerson Mnangagwa yesterday announced that the country has elevated its coronavirus restrictions to level 4, meaning that measures to stem the pandemic have been tightened.
This comes at a time when the figures of those testing positive and those succumbing to COVID-19 have gone up to unprecedented levels.
The Minister of Health reported that there were a record 1,249 people who tested positive for the coronavirus in just one day on Monday, and 12 deaths. Please let me correct that. One day on Tuesday, that was yesterday, and 12 deaths.
Yes, Jonga, the ministry reported that as at 29 June 2021, Zimbabwe had 48,533 confirmed cases, including 38,323 recoveries and 1,761 deaths. And to date, a total of 770,000 people and 709 have been vaccinated against COVID-19.
We are also going to be talking about other developments in South Africa, where former President Jacob Zuma has been sentenced to an unappealable 15 months in prison for contempt of court.
And still in South Africa, we are going to discuss the issue of residence permits that were set to expire today, but have been extended.
And remember, there is an insurrection in Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, where masses have risen against one of the world's last absolute monarch. We are also going to talk about that.
Yebo Jonga, Zulukandaba siyadibana njalo kuhlelo lwethu lwe-Live Talk Diaspora Forum, lapho ke esixoxa lezizalwane zeZimbabwe ezihlala emazweni. Lamhlanje ke sikhangela indaba ezithiyeneyo, siqala ke ngayona le hluphileyo yansuku zonke, indaba ye-coronavirus, lapho esizwa khona kuthiwa amanani akhona asekhula kakhulu ongaze kubonakale. Sikhuluma nje ngolwesibili kulabantu abadlula 1,200 ababanjwe igciwane le-coronavirus, kwabhubha abali-12. Sizakhangela nje lokunye okwenzakalayo kuNingizimu Afrika. Sikhangeleke Swaziland lapho okulomvukela khona. Siphinde sikhangele lo daba owayengumongameli uJacob Zuma we-South Africa, yena ogwetshelwe ukuhlala entilongweni okwenyanga ezingu-15, 15 Jonga.
Wongu ndizvo zvawadiwa vateereri nevatariri. Nhasi muchirongwa chedu cheDiaspora Live Talk, patinotarisa nyaya nezvinosangana nevana veZimbabwe vari kunze kwenyika pamwe chete nevari munyika. Tiri kutarisa nenyaya yekudzikwa kwemutemo wakasimba we-lockdown level 4 kuti nyaya yekupararira kwedenda reCovid-19 inge ichiedza kudzivirirwa. Takanzwa nezvino mutungamiri wenyika Emerson Mnangagwa vachizivisa nezvematanho iwayo. Asi pamatanho ipapo pakati simbisei zvakare kune vanenge vachibva kunze kwenyika. Takanzwa kuti vanhu vanenge vachibva kunyika dzinofungidzirwa kunzi kana kuti dzinenge dzawanikwa dziine utachiwana hwealpha kana hwedelta vanenge vachizoiswa kwavo voga, inganzi pachirungu quarantine. Then vari ikoko vanenge vachitarisirwa kuvhenekwa kanokwana kuita kana kuti 4 times, vachivhenekwa vachizvibhadharira voga mari dzekugara quarantine pamwe chete nemari dzekuvhenekwa. Ndo manga matambudziko anenge achitarisana nevana veZimbabwe vanenge vachibva kunze kwenyika vachidzokera kumusha munguva iyo ino yekuoma kwezvinhu yedenda reCovid-19. Tiri kunzwawo kuti zvizvarwa zveZimbabwe zviri kumusha zvichigara kunyika yeBritain zviri kunetseka kuti zvinge zvichidzokera kuBritain pane ino nguva, nokuti tinonzwa kuti kunonzi vanofanira kubhadhara mari inoita 1,750 pounds kana ndisingakanganise, yekuti vange vachiendeswa kuquarantine vachizvigarira vega vachizvibhadharira kusvika vaonekwa kuti havana denda reCovid-19. Mari iri kunzi nevanhu imari yakawanda kwazvo kuti vange vachikwanisa kuiunganidza ivo vanga vari kumusha kuZimbabwe. Tichabatawo nyaya yemutemo welockdown iwe zvakare takaona South Africa ichiisawo level 4. Tiri muSouth Africa imomo tichabatawo zvakare nyaya yekuwedzerwa kweupenyu hwemapemiti kana magwaro anobvumidza zvizvarwa zveZimbabwe kuti zvinge zvichigara nekushanda zviri muSouth Africa. Tinonzwa kuti magwaro iwayo yanga achipera kushanda nhasi asi awedzerwa kusvika mukupera kwaSeptember. Imwe nyaya tichabata iyoyo. MuSouth Africa zvakare mune nyaya vaive mutungamiri weSouth Africa vaJacob Zuma vakavanikwa vaine mhosva yekuzvidza dare, vakatongerwa kugara mudare kana kuti mutirongo kwenguva ingaita mwedzi 15 months vari mutirongo. Tichabatawo nyaya iri kuitika kuEswatini yaimbozivikanwa kunzi Swaziland, kwatiri kunzwa vana venyika iyoyo vachinzi vari kumuka chibhebhenenga vachigunun'una nekunyunyuta pamusoro pematongero avanoti ari kuitwa namambo Muswati vanotonga ikoko kuSwaziland kuEswatini. Zvaita kuti zvikoro zvivharwe, mabhizimusi avharwe nenyaya dzekufamba chaidzo dzemabhazi. Tinonzwa kuti mabhazi akatonza anenge amiswa kufamba. Ndo nyaya dzimwe dzatiri kukurukura Chris. Nhasi tinani vadare vedu?
Yes, Chonga, today we have a very strong lineup of, we have Dr. Matthew Nyashanu, we have Dr. Vusumuzi Manda, we have Zenzo Nkomo. Yes, we have quite a full plate. So let's jump right into it. We'll start off, of course, with Dr. Nyashanu, since we are starting off with the coronavirus. Welcome to the show, Dr. Nyashanu.
Oh, thank you very much.
Dr. Nyashanu, togamuchira muchirongwa chedu.
Dr. Mfaro.
Ndizvozvo. Maybe you can start by explaining to us what you think about the new lockdown level 4 restrictions announced yesterday by President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and how it is going to affect Zimbabweans in general and those in the diaspora in particular, because we understand that they will be forced to go into quarantine and will be tested 4 times while in quarantine, and they will be meeting all those expenses on their own.
Yes, the quarantine and subsequent detention of people as a result of COVID-19 new variants is not new. If this is meant to protect people, that is fine. But there is also something that needs to be done to address the people's concerns. When we look at Zimbabwe, one of the things that you will find is that Zimbabwe did not have any survival package, which they had to try and help those people who will then suffer under lockdown. I'm more concerned about people who are living in Zimbabwe, who do not have work, who survive by informal trading, and these people, whilst the government is ensuing the lockdown, they need also to come up with feasible ideas that will support these people. And they've gone now for more than a year without anyone looking at them, how they are going to survive. This is something that is of big concern. If all they are doing to say people who are coming in need to be detained, yes, it's within public health guidelines. If it is being done in the right way, that will be positive. But what is of concern are those unemployed people, are those people who are vulnerable, who are in Zimbabwe, whose life has been cut because of the lockdown. We know that the lockdown is actually about making sure that people are not working at certain times, but nothing has been done to look after the welfare of people who are vulnerable, who are unemployed. Zimbabwe is one of the worst economic countries in terms of employment. We know that a big number of people do not have jobs, but there hasn't been any survival package. Other countries that have actually followed the same strategy of public health where they lock down, there has been some freebies, there has been some help that has been given to people and make them to survive. But the dangerous thing that we are seeing in Zimbabwe is that they do not care. All they think is they are protecting people from coronavirus, whilst hunger can be more dangerous than coronavirus. I think there is need for them to balance the prevention of coronavirus and also the survival of what we call vulnerable people. And those, in terms of social justice and public health, those groups need to be protected. We have elderly people, we have people who are HIV positive, who actually do not have anywhere to get 3 meals, let alone 2 meals a day. But there's nothing that has been put forward, which is worrying in terms of social justice.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nyashanu. Let's hear from Dr. Mavaza. What's your take on that? I'm sure you are itching to say a word or two.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, yes, we need to understand that we are living in difficult times. The times we are actually struggling from this virus. And unfortunately, the virus keeps on multiplying in its different strengths and its different names. But however, when we look at the issue at large, Dr. Nyashanu is blowing both hot and cold, because
No, please, can you debate issues? Can you stop talking about my name? This is the problem of ZANU-PF. They do not think, they are taught from Chitepo School of Ideology, where they are on about attacking people. They don't think about real issues. I do not want to debate with people who think so low like this. Let's debate about issues and facts. It is not about ZANU-PF. This is the life of people, Mavaza. This is the life of people, not targeting individuals. This is not Chitepo School of Ideology.
Mof, can you keep quiet and listen? The problem with Dr. Nyashanu is he is not seeing the danger people are facing with this COVID. And all what he's seeing is a problem of people who are put on quarantine or who are put on lockdown. What we are saying here is it is necessary in Zimbabwe and any other country that people be locked down, because this COVID is started again. This is another third wave. Regardless of what they will eat tomorrow or not, the point is it's better to be hungry than to be dead. So it is necessary that people be restricted a number of freedoms in order to protect them from this COVID. The restriction in itself does not cure COVID, but it protects them. A country which gives you a restriction, they look at their own health system. They see they cannot sustain. Should there be a problem? If you see now, we have about 1,800 people within a day. in Zimbabwe, which is quite a big number. And we are only talking about those who succeeded to be tested. There could be a number who have not been tested. There could be a number who could not be tested every day. And those who are dying who could not be tested after death because there's no man to do that. So in other words, it is important that people be asked to stay at home, or they have conditions to keep them around. But the further point I was going to look at is, when we look at what is happening around the world, especially England, I'll talk about England and Zimbabwe. What's happening in England, Jonga, you've raised that issue, that when people come from Zimbabwe or from any red zone area, they will have to be quarantined at their own cost. And when they finish, they will be tested if they've got if they are clear. After 10 days, then they are released. The idea is not to punish people, but the idea is to discourage any traveling at this time. The idea is to discourage traveling. The only problem which I have is I don't understand how these countries, probably Dr. Nyashanu can help us, how these countries are categorizing African countries as red zone and some as not red zone. And at the same time, here in England, the people were gathered in their thousands watching football yesterday. And we are encouraged again to be gathering on Saturday when the team plays in Italy. So in other words, it's so confusing whether these rules which are given and this categorization of the nations is not merely political. I'm thinking that if COVID is in each and every country, it is difficult for people to just turn up and say, from Norway, Zimbabwe now is in red zone. Why are we in red zone? We are having 5 people dying a day, and other countries are having 50. So in short, I'm saying, yes, while I do agree that we need the restrictions, but sometimes it is unnecessary. The sanctions put on people traveling away out of Zimbabwe, going back to England, if they are British or if they've got stay to stay there.
But yes. Is it not about the vaccination program, depending on how people are taking up the vaccinations? Like in most countries in Africa, there are no vaccines, and some people are not willing to take up the vaccination.
But you'd notice that Zimbabwe is number 2 in Africa in the vaccination drive. It has done very well above other countries who are economically stable. And as a result, Zimbabwe have got the highest number of vaccinated people if we are measuring as per our population. And again, the traveling people, those who are able to travel in from Zimbabwe to other countries, most of them have been vaccinated. And if you look at it again, Jonga, you will see that when they travel from Zimbabwe or from any other country, they are tested of COVID before they leave, and they are tested on arrival. So therefore, these are quarantined at their own cost and then declared to be coming from a red zone country. It is a bit unfair. It is not entirely health issue.
But
it is more political.
Dr. Mavaza, is it not the same as Zimbabwe placing under quarantine those coming from countries with the Alpha and Delta variants? Is it not the same as what is happening in all these other countries?
The difference is, Jonga, in Zimbabwe, until 2 weeks ago, people were not quarantined. They were asked to go home and do self-quarantine, regardless of where you're coming from. And so from other nations, they were asked to go to hotels of their choice. What is happening in England is that when you reach at the airport, you are bundled into a bus and taken to hotels of their choice, which you will have paid for. And you are not allowed to leave your country unless you have paid for that hotel. And again, what it means is a normal hotel, like Premier Inn Hotel, the budget hotels, are normally £49 per night. And so it means in 10 days, you're supposed to pay £400. But the charges they are having now is £1,750 per 10 days, which means we are paying £175 a night, which is not what you could pay if you had chosen a hotel of your choice, like Holiday Inn and Premier Inn, or those with one-star hotels. So in other words, the prices are so exorbitant. Yes, we understand the reason is to discourage traveling, but this is exploitation at its highest level. And it's unfair because you'd have gone home, you'd have traveled to Zimbabwe, not for holiday. Some had gone for funerals, some had gone for some agent business, family businesses and other things. And when they're coming back, that's where they are working, or that's where they are staying. They are residents of England, but they've got the second home in Zimbabwe. It will be unfair because the other countries with the high death rate of COVID in Europe are not in the red zone as Zimbabwe is, and or rather Southern Africa is. So in other words, the choice of putting these countries on the zones and coloring them amber, red, and green, it is not motivated by what is happening on the ground. It is motivated by what they think on the boardroom, and this is wrong. We cannot decide the economical future and the health future of another country over the boardroom without the on-ground research.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mavaza.
Yes, Jonga, we will briefly now go to South Africa, where like we promised our listeners, we are going to get an update of what's taking place there in South Africa. And to give us the update, we have Mr. Vusumuzi, Dr. Vusumuzi Smart. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
Yes, good evening, sir. So give us an update. We had the sentence 15 months. So what is happening now? He's going to be given 5 days for him to, I don't know what those 5 days are for, but can you just tell us and give us an update of what's going on?
Well, look, we've got a country that is thrown in turmoil to a certain extent, because after the judgment that was given yesterday, you've got those people that are very sympathetic to President Zuma. If you will remember, during the ANC conference in 2017, President Ramaphosa won by a very small margin over the President Zuma camp. So ANC is completely divided, and as we are speaking right now, we understand that people are still trickling in and coming at his house, particularly those of the MK, the Mkhonto weSizwe Veterans Association. And they're saying, look, there is no point in taking President Zuma to prison, because this is a plot. I mean, it's something that has always been planned. I mean, since 2004, when he was victimized by President Thabo Mbeki, when he was first demoted and then charged with the rape of the late victim that was said to have been raped by him. So what we have is basically that the Constitutional Court gave him 5 days in which he must then hand himself either to the South African police services in Kandla or in Johannesburg, depending on where he is. And if he does not hand himself to the police services so that the police services can then take him to prison, commit him to prison, the Minister of Police has then been mandated that within the 3 days following the expire of those 5 days, they must do everything in their power to arrest him and commit him to prison. So we have had his foundation saying the minority judgment is actually vindicating the view that President Zuma's camp has, which is basically that he cannot be committed to prison on a criminal charge when there is no charge sheet, when in actual fact he has not been tried for the case of contempt, because that there should be formal charges brought to him, for that contempt as a criminal charge. So yeah, we have a country that really at this particular stage looks a bit divided and unsure about the future. And we also hear that the ANC is going to be discussing the matter during the course of this weekend to decide how to proceed, going forward.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And we also have Mr. Zenzo Nkomo. Mr. Nkomo. Mr. Nkomo. I think we have a problem with Mr. Nkomo. Anyway, Dr. Swanda, So from what you are getting, there's no way he can appeal. So he's going straight to jail.
Yes, because it's a constitutional court judgment. Remember, you cannot appeal, anywhere. There is no other. The constitutional court is the apex court, of the land, and the judgment of the constitutional court can therefore not, be appealed anywhere. I mean, of course, we can have petitions, people trying to petition and all that, but once the apex court, and remember that the South African system is such that it's more really of one where we are trying to balance the judiciary, the legislature and the executive. So it's not easy to interfere with that particular decision because it will be seen as interfering with the work of the judiciary, which is seen to have, similar powers or an equal balancing effect with the legislature and the executive. And therefore, a balancing leg of the trias politica. So in that particular view, it will be going to be very, very difficult for anyone to really deal with the matter of President Zuma, even at presidential level in terms of a presidential pardon. But it could be done, and that looks like the only alternative if ANC might want maybe to save face. But I think the problem is that ANC has got a lot of issues, especially, if they're trying to please those that were not happy with the Zuma camp. But in my view, I think the only view could be a view where basically, the president gives him a pardon and comes up with a story about not committing the former president and saying, look, try to strike a balance. But other than that, there is no appeal.
Yeah, inyaya yakaoma Dr. Swanda, regai ningokukandirai mubvunzo nerurimi rwaamai kuti tiri kunzwa kuti waive mutungamiri weSouth Africa vaJacob Zuma vanzi vakandwe mujeri kwemwedzi 15 mushure mekunge vawanikwa vaine mhosva yekuzvidza dare. Zvinhu zvakamira sei imomo nokuti tiri kuona kana pamadande mutanda apa panenge paita kupesana kwemaonero vanhu vachitaura zvavanofunga kuti dai zvakaitwa nenzira yakati.
Ichokwadi chaizvo, former president Jacob Zuma vanzi ngavaende kujere kwemwedzi 15 nenyaya yekuti havana kuenda kucommission kunotaura. Chero pavakaenda kucommission havana kuzvimisira kuti vataure vapindure mibvunzo. Izvi zvakonzera kuti vanhu vanopikisana vemu-ANC avo vanosapota vapresident Zuma nevanosapota president Ramaphosa pave nekurwa nekusanzwisana, uye tiri kuona kuti iwo mutongo wacho uri kuonekwa kunge mutongo unoratidza kuti chero mutemo chavo hauna kumira pamwe chete. Asi izvozvo hachizi chinhu chinoshamisa nekuti mumatare muno tinoziva kuti panowanika mitongo miviri, potorwa mutongo uyu unenge waburiswa nevakawanda, majaji akawanda. Saka izvozvo hazvishamisi. Asi taona kuti ava vanofambidzana napresident Zuma vari kuti kutonga kwevashoma uku, mutongo wapiwa nevashoma ndiwo chaiwo unofanira kunge waitwa, nekuti zviri kuitika patiri kuona kuti yanyaya yepolitics dzakutambwa nevanhu vakuti aiwa kusungwa uku kusungwa kwezvematongerwo enyika, hakuzi kusungwa kwokuti vaZuma vakatadza chaizvo. Saka tiri kuona kuti paita kusanzwisisana, uye tiri kuona kuti zvinhu zvinogona kungoshata paita kurwisana ipapa.
Asi tichitarisa mamiriro akaita nyaya iyoyi, vaZuma havagona here kungoregerwa nemutungamiri wenyika?
Ichokwadi ichocho kuti vaZuma vanogona kuregedzwa nemutungamiri wenyika, asi dambudziko riripo nderekuti mutungamiri wenyika navaZuma vanenge vasinganyatsoona neziso rimwe chete, pagara pane kusanzwisisana kwakati kuti. Saka tinoona kuti chinoitika nzira chete yekuti vaZuma vasaende kujere inzira yekuti mutungamiri wenyika apindire nenzira yekuti avaregerere, nekuti mutungamiri wenyika ndiye chete angagona kuvaregerera, nekuti havagoni kudzokera zvekumatare kuti vanokumbira kuti mutongo iwo utariswe zvakare, nekuti izvi mutongo uyu wabva kuconstitutional court inova court yekupedzisira munyika. Saka tinoona zvakare chimwe chinonetsa ndechekuti ANC yagara ichishorwa nekuti ine mashandiro ayo anoonekwa kuti haasi kufamba zvakanaka. Tinoona kuti vacho vanhu vakazara corruption uye mbavha. Saka vanhu tinoona kuti mutungamiri neANC vari kutya zvakare, vane kutya kuti kana vakapindira vachazonzi vapindura nokuti varoda kuti vaprotectane, vadzivirirana. Havadi kuti Zuma asungwe, nokuti akasungwa uchataura nyaya dzavo, nekuti kubva kare vaZuma vaiti kana vangosungwa kana pangoitika chimwe chinhu vachabudisa nyaya dzese dzavainadzo dzavanoziva. Uyezve tinoziva kuti muAfrica magara mune dambudziko rokuti mapoliticians nevatungamiri venyika havasungwi nekuti vanoonekwa kunge vanhu vari pamusoro pemutemo. Saka dambudziko riripo nderekuti kana zvikanzi havachasungwi zvichazonzi atagara tichiziva kuti mapoliticians haasungwi, saka mutemo haushandi, unongoshandiswa chete pane vamwe vanhu noti pane vanhu vane mari.
Asi vaZuma vati vapa here zvikonzero zvakaita kuti vasaenda kudare?
VaZuma chikonzero chavakapa ndechekuti nyaya yavo yekuti vanga vati vazondo vazvibise vabude panyaya yekuva commission nekuti vanozivana navo yanga isati yanyanzotaurwa. Saka vakati vanga vaine nyaya, saka constitutional court yanga isingagoni kuti ipe mutongo nokuti vanga vaapila judgment yavazondo yekuti vazondo munhu wavanozivana naye zvokuti hagoni kuti ave munhu ari fair panyaya yavo pamutongo wavo, anofanirwa kuti abviswe. Ndo chavakarambira kuenda, vakati havagoni kugara pamusoro pamberi pakomishina uyu kana kuti chairperson vazondo nekuti munhu wavanoziva aigara achivashandira kumba uye ndivo vakamuapointa kuti aende pabhenji. Saka vaoni kuti zvichafamba zvakanaka kana vazondo vachienderera mberi varivo chairperson wekomishini.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swanda. Chris.
Yeah, Swanda. Before we take other guests, can you just give us an update on the coronavirus in South Africa? We heard there was also an upgrade of the level. Can you tell us what is the situation?
I didn't hear that question. Sorry, my phone was ringing, so I had to mute it. If you could repeat it again.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying, what is the situation regarding coronavirus? We know that the level has changed. So can you give us a brief update?
Yes, I mean, in terms of the COVID-19, as we are sitting right now, we're sitting at level 4, and we've got a lot of businesses that have been closed, and people are being encouraged to work from home. Restaurants, can only sell takeouts. People cannot sit inside. Gyms and other facilities, beer, alcohol, have been closed. So level 4 basically puts us back again where even the curfew hours start from 9 to 4 in the morning. So we have got more restrictions now and more criminal offenses, including gatherings. I think this was actually brought in, especially after the EFF had a gathering that was protesting against the failure by the country to roll out, the vaccine extensively, to the extent that the EFF leader compared South Africa to Zimbabwe, where he basically said Zimbabwe seems to be doing a lot better, especially by taking the Chinese, virus. So to that effect, in these regulations, unlike what we have seen in the past, we have seen that there is a crime of incitement that has been, added in to say if someone incites or gets people to gather, they are going to be arrested, because it is known that Malema has got a huge, following. So when he tells people that they need to go out and protest against the government for failing to roll out, the vaccine more effectively, people would obviously listen to him. So those are some of the changes that we currently have as it stands.
Thank you so much. Please do stand by. Dr. Nyashanu. Dr. Nyashanu, you heard what Dr. Swanda has said about the situation in South Africa. So now let's talk about the cross-border movement between South Africa and Zimbabwe. We have heard in the past that there was the South African variant, but now when we talk of the level 4 in Zimbabwe, not much is being said about these variants, including of course, they are saying people are coming should be, quarantined and so forth, but there's not much about South Africa, people coming from South Africa. What do you know?
I think this is where our health system, our public health system in Zimbabwe has got sort of some problems in terms of strategical thinking, strategical execution of activities. The main problem of cross-border people coming from South Africa into Zimbabwe happens between South Africa and Zimbabwe. And the reason that is being given by many countries that are putting Zimbabwe on the red list, it is also boiling down to poor surveillance of Zimbabwe, which is next to South Africa, which had that variant. In fact, if Zimbabwe had a very strong surveillance system and being able to make sure that everyone who comes is accounted for, and that could actually put us on another level in terms of how we are relating with other external other countries elsewhere who are talking about all this as well. The other thing that needs also to be done in terms of public health, when people are coming from South Africa and coming into Zimbabwe, they are porous positions which can be used by people. Those need actually to be closed and make sure that people use one port. Without that, this is what is also causing some siege in Zimbabwe. So we could actually avoid a lot of people who are just crossing with the other variants into Zimbabwe. But it is because the surveillance system is not that strong. So going forward again, I have always talked about the vulnerability of the Zimbabwean people looking at economic activities that has been hampered by constant closure because of COVID-19. There is also need. Meanwhile, it is important that we close the country. There is also need to protect vulnerable people as part of what we call social justice in public health. And these people need to be protected. Remember, Zimbabwe is one of those countries that were affected by HIV. And there are a lot of people who are vulnerable, who are taking antiretrovirals, who need food so that those antiretrovirals can work effectively. So in public health, those people need to be looked after, and there is need for the Ministry of Health to make sure that they identify those people who are living with what we call long-term conditions and make sure that they are supported effectively.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nyashano. Before I go to Dr. Mavaza, just a question, Dr. Nyashano. This is just for 2 weeks. Do you think it will affect as many people as you are looking at?
2 weeks is a long period. You need food in 2 days. So 2 weeks is quite very long. There is need for some strategical thinking in terms of how they are looking after vulnerable people. They are elderly people, they are young people, they are orphans. We know the roads that we have traveled. We know how people in Zimbabwe have been affected by a variety of problems. So probably there is need for us to make sure that people are protected because they've traveled a long road. This is not the starting point.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nyashano. Dr. Mavaza, your take on what Dr. Nyashano just said?
Right. Okay, just 2 quick things. Probably you can allow me just 1 second to give a small comment on what's happening in South Africa over the former president Jacob Zuma. I want just to look at the legal perspective of the whole issue. To start with, the conviction of Mr. Zuma is more political than legal. Again, we need to understand that Zuma had made an objection to appear before this committee because the chair of that committee is his brother-in-law, and they've had long-standing domestic issues between him and the chair. And then the chair, with the deputy judge president, could not therefore in any way be fair to Zuma. And so Zuma's reason for not attending was quite valid. So while the commission was supposed to listen and hear what Zuma had objected to, the same person is objecting against just declared him stubborn and slapped him with contempt of court and applied for his warrant of arrest. Now, to show that the court was very malicious, they did not take the contempt of court to another court. They went straight to the highest court. a contempt of court is not a constitutional matter. It could have gone to a high court. It could have gone to magistrate's court. It would have gone to any other court. But they went to the highest court on the land, even though the commission was set up on constitutional grounds. But the contempt was not constitutional. It was a criminal matter which was supposed to go through the process. So in other words, Zuma just received an unfair hearing, unfair treatment, and what we see is a situation where it's going to cause a lot of havoc in South Africa, where the Zuma supporters are going to take it on tribal grounds instead of political grounds. Because so far, the news around is that people in KwaZulu-Natal are saying this cannot be done to us because Ramaphosa is from the other section. So in short, we are saying that this is a problem where judges are allowed to run riots in the country. They cause confusion. So I just thought I'll just raise those issues to say, before we condemn Zuma, look at the reasons why he didn't go. And he raised those reasons. And these reasons were very valid because that was his brother-in-law sitting as the chair. And they've got their own problems which have been going on and on. And this now brother-in-law is in power and took the matter straight away to the acting Chief Justice because the Chief Justice is on leave. And by so doing, it was already a plan that Zuma would not survive it. So at the end of the day, yes, Zuma cannot appeal, but the president, if he wants to be fair, he could set aside that or he could pardon Zuma. But Zuma remains a convicted person as far as contempt is concerned. But he would be pardoned if the president agrees. And I think President Ramaphosa knows what is going to come, despite their own misunderstanding with Zuma. I can assure you that in 4 days he will set aside the sentence and pardon him, and which is legal and lawful to do, despite what Malema has been saying that he wants to go himself and his team to pick Zuma and throw him to prison. Those are political speeches on a rally. So in short, yes, South Africa has been plunged into a constitutional crisis, more than what Zimbabwe almost got last month or so. So in short, I thought we just have to comment on that one. But however, coming to the other issue which we're talking about, which Dr. Nyashan was talking about.
Dr. Mavaza, before you go any further, can I ask, there's something about this issue when it is said that Zondo is the brother-in-law, right, of Zuma.
Yes.
But one would think that he would instead do some favors. And what was their fallout?
They have heard from Zuma's affidavit. They've had long-standing family problems. Mostly if you look at most of our brother-in-laws, we are not as best of friends. There's always one or two we fight with. And Zuma raised it up and said, we've had our own domestic fights, and this guy would not be fair on me. So this hearing will be already a joke because the guy is biased against me from the beginning. So when we look at that aspect, it will look that there is a fight, which Zuma has not told us what exactly it is, but there has been a misunderstanding between Zondo and Zuma. And in any civil society, you wouldn't stick yourself, you wouldn't fight to say, I want to be the chairman still, even though there are complaints. Even if the complaint is useless, you rather give somebody. There are so many judges capable in South Africa to take the position of Zondo in that commission. But Zondo refused, which was again stubborn and malicious. And it has taken South Africa to where it is now, because one person just refused to recuse himself.
Thank you so much. Okay. Maybe we can now go back to Dr. Nyashano's comments. You can react on that.
Yes. Of course, we do understand that our trace and tracking system in Zimbabwe is not up to standard as we could see in the first world. But with what we have, Zimbabwe is not discriminating people by the names of the variants of the virus. They are simply saying, as long as you are coming from a country where there is a high level of this, you will need to be quarantined. Again, when we look at that, whether hunger comes and strikes you in 2 days, we are saying here we can help. People will still be helped with food. If there is a problem, there's always a number to call, which has been given Dr. Nyashanu. People have been asked to call if they don't have food, and it's only going to be for 2 weeks. And in the meantime, there are some people who are allowed to go to work. The companies are allowed to work at 40%, not at that level. Public transport has been reduced again, and the number of people who are supposed to be in those in the buses and other public areas. The other word is that the point we are looking at. Yes, we could be hungry, but nobody's going to die of hunger in those 2 weeks. So the people will be helped. It cannot be the much help which can be visible and which people will see that we have eaten, but it's going to be something to keep you going until we are out of these woods, out of this problem of the COVID. Because once COVID comes, you know what happened to Zimbabwe in January and December, January. People died a lot. Hospitals could not afford, they didn't have beds at all. We cannot have that situation again. And this is the reason why we are saying, stay where you are, be safe, stay at home unless it is necessary. But those who need to go out to look for food, to buy, shops are open. They are only going to close at 5 o'clock. So you can still go and buy. Those who have done, who are going to work, and they are allowed to work at 40% at the workplace. And the companies have been instructed to give people full salaries, and they can claim whatever they have lost from the government for those 2 weeks. So in other words, considering that we are a third world country and we are struggling economically, I think the measures put by the government are quite plausible, and we should really give credit to where it is. And then probably the last point, which I was going to raise, which is not COVID, was, you've not asked about, I was going to talk about Swaziland because I was schooled in Swaziland. So sorry, I thought we had asked that question.
Okay. Yeah, we are also going to look at that, but maybe before we go to Swaziland, I can just throw a question to you. Zimbabwe is just saying those who are coming from countries with Alpha and Delta variants, but they are not mentioning them by name. And some people, they don't even care as to research or look at news and all that. How will people know the country they are coming from is one of the affected countries?
But actually, Jonga, most people who are traveling, except very few, most people who are traveling are people who are quite knowledgeable, and they do understand. They are all aware of the pandemic and what we are. And actually, before they even travel,
not all, Dr. Mavaza. There are some people who don't even know politics or what, because they don't care about what is happening.
That's why I said most people. Most people who are traveling, they are quite knowledgeable as to know where they are traveling to and why they are going there. So, as I've been saying, the quarantining back in Zimbabwe is done, as I've said, to discourage people traveling until the quarantine period is over. So, in other words, some people, depending where they are and their circumstances, could manage to wait for 2 weeks before they travel. Of course, there are some who have to travel out of agents, and then those are the ones who would have to go there. But you have to think about two things. If you can be quarantined for 10 days, why do you have to rush there? Why don't you wait for those 14 days and the quarantine is over? Because either way, if you go there, you'll be quarantined. So you can adjust your travel plans until this problem is over. And then you go home when you know that it's safe to do so for yourself, your relatives, and beloved ones who will be around you, and those passengers you fly with, because you don't know who is infected until you get it.
Thank you so much. Now we can dwell on the Eswatini insurrections, because we only have, I think, around 10 to 11 minutes. Chris, the Eswatini issue.
Yes, so Dr. Mavaza, you said you went there to school, so you are aware of how the situation is like. So can you tell us about these complaints? We understand people have been complaining about the economic and political situation for some time now until it reached this stage. So when you were there, what was the situation like?
Yeah, Swaziland has always been complaining about the king, King Mswati the Third. As we are all aware, he is the only, or Swaziland was the only absolute monarch in Africa, or in the whole world actually. And with Lesotho now, he has got a constitutional monarch, just like in England. But what has been happening all along, people of Swaziland, they wanted to change the system. They wanted to have their MPs elected on party basis and not appointed. And they wanted their they've got what they call the Tinkundla system of elections, of governance, which is like small votes like Banasabuku. So, in other words, the king had resisted the changing, the constitutional changes. But what we look at is the king does not rule that country alone. He rules with a council, and it is that council which votes for whatever is to be done. But if we look at the whole issue on the round, Swaziland has got is the only country which has stuck to its culture, which has stuck to its Africanism, and the move to remove the monarch from Swaziland, it is not a democratic move. It is entirely a move just to remove the last African fight left in Africa. The king, remember, Swaziland is about 1.2, 1.3 million people. That's the whole population. It's not a very big country. And again, in that basis, the prime minister was appointed by the king. And the prime minister, having been appointed by the king, his duty was only to be the leader of government who would take everything else which was decided to the king, because the king was executive, like an executive president. So these are the things they were asking to change. So what they did is, when they raised the petition to say, can we change the government? It just came like a shock, because they've got their process of raising their issues. Then the king put a decree to say, no, nobody can just come up with petitions. Petitions are no longer accepted until further notice. Then it triggered the violence and the demonstrations, which became violent overnight. Of course, we cannot rule out the criminal elements. There was a misinformation yesterday that the king had escaped the country and has gone to South Africa. The king is actually at a palace called Lobamba, where he is now, and he has not left the country at all. The confusion was one of the king's jets had gone to Zambia for refueling, I think, and people thought the king had run away. But the reality of the matter is, yes, there are some democratic issues which are genuinely raised and which have to be looked at. Unfortunately, instead of looking at them, the king simply banned complaining at all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's the problems in Swaziland.
Yes, Dr. Nyashano, your take on what is happening in Swaziland. Ngati mungotaura nerurimi rwamai inzwe kuti zvakamira sei nemaonerei.
Zviri kuitika kuSwaziland hazvisi zvinhu zvitsva, kana tichitaura nezvevanhu vatinoti vanodzvinyirira, uyezve vanoshandisa magariro evanhu kudzvinyirira vamwe vanhu. Tinoziva kuti muchivanhu mukugara kune atinoti madzishe, asi nekufamba kwakaita kurarama kwevanhu kune mamwe matongerwo atakaona kuti aiwaka. Matongerwo awawa ekuchimana chekwedu kwaNyashanuko haachakwanisi kuti tinge tichitongawo nevanobva kumasvingo kwaiwa. Kwane dzimwewo system. Saka kuSwaziland ndinoona sekunge kwanga kwasarira kusure zvikuru. Naizvozvo zviri kuitika kuSwaziland hazvisi zvinhu zvitsva mune vanhu vanenge vachidzvinyirirwa ba. Vanhu vari kutoratidza kuti aiwa kuno kutatsva matumbu nezvinhu zvinenge zvichinzi zvakapera kare. Tine mamwe tinoti machifi muAfrica anga ari makuru zvikuru, asi vanhu nekuona kuti zvasiyana nenguva tinana King Mushishi, tinana ma kings in South Africa, different kings. MuZimbabwe tave nemaking edu. Asi vakaona kuti aiwa izvi zvinhu zvakupisa hatingakwanisi kutonga nyika yese. Tinenge tichienderanawo nezviri kuitika nekubudirira kuri kuita vanhu neupfumi nekuvandudzwa kweupfumi kuti zvinge zvichienderera. Asi zviri kuitika kuSwaziland zvinoratidza kuti ishe wekuSwaziland akaoma musoro, uyezve haadzidzi kuona zvimwe zvinhu zviri kuitika pa next door. Kunonzi ukaona shamwari yako ichigerwa nebadza, iwe fana kuzvigerawo nereza kuti usazorwadziwa. Zvine haana kumbozviona paidzidza vamwe, haana kuzviona. Izvi zvaakuitika izvi ndokusadzidza kwaakaona zvichiitika kuBotswana, zvichiitika kuZimbabwe, zvichiitika aiwa kwakupinda mamwe masystems egovernment anoenderana nenguva iyoyo. Ndo zvinhu zvetinenge tichida kuti vanhu vadzidze kana vari vana ishe, vari vanani, pamunotonga panoenderanawo nesimba renyu. Iye zvino kuti tingati nyika inonge yakutongwa nachifi, zvangofunga akavata hake otodza Swaziland yese. Aiwa vanhu vekuSwaziland vanofana kuitawo simba rekuti vanovhotera mumwe munhu.
Thank you so much.
Anenge achibva kumamana amiririra.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nyashano. Chris?
Yes, we are fast approaching the end of the show. So, Dr. Mavaza, what's your take, your final take on the current lockdown in Zimbabwe? Do you think that the 2 weeks will be enough to bring down the numbers? We saw the numbers are going into their thousands now of positive cases. Do you think the 2 weeks is enough?
No, I think 2 weeks is not enough. But of course, there is to be a balancing act here to balance the economy of the country. The more we are on lockdown, the more the economy goes down. And then we are balancing the economy and the health. So in other words, the 2 weeks will actually create a bridge between the people and the virus. And then probably they will have to assess to see if it worked. If it has worked, probably they could loosen some other tighter measures and put the measures which can compromise people's living and the dealing with the virus.
And still on the same issue, there were some issues which were raised by Dr. Nyashanu about the social nets, safety nets, you know, getting people to stay indoors for 2 weeks when they rely on selling on the streets. It's quite a heavy thing to do. What do you think about that?
But the point here was very clear. The government does not say people must not go out and sell. The government had given a curfew. There is a time limit to be on the street. Only when you're going to buy or when you are giving services. But if you are doing nothing, you should not be in the streets. So in other words, there is no social blackout to amenities, to needs, to food and everything. It is catered for. So it's only an alarmist mentality which flows from the mind of very few who think that a lockdown simply means people are locked in the houses. We have learned from the first lockdown of last year that we cannot do that. People are allowed to go buy, shop, and sell, but at a minimum period.
Thank you. Tinotarisira kuti tinenge tichiremekedzana tisingasoropodzane Dr. Mavaza. Regai chinzwe kuna Dr. Nyashanu. 30 seconds. Nguva yaenda.
Yeah, I think that in Zimbabwe, what has not been thought about is the economic level of the people that are in Zimbabwe. If a government puts up a phone for people to call, people who cannot find bus fare to get into town, who walk into town, where will they get money to phone them to say that we do not have food? That is actually not very good for people who are poor, people who are vulnerable. I think the Ministry of Education is the Ministry for Health and the Public Health Department need to rethink their strategy. They need also to put into consideration people who are vulnerable, who have not been looked after. I think the health outcomes of the Zimbabwean people as of now has grown worse since the start of the pandemic. There hasn't been a lot of help that we have seen. The social safety net has been tattered and torn. We know that Zimbabwe has undergone a lot of problems, social problems, diseases, communicable, non-communicable. We are vulnerable people. These people have not been mirrored in terms of the Zimbabwean public health policies. There is need that they think proactively, and there is need to put up a public health system that supports vulnerable people in order to meet social justice and all those other millennium goals that support people and communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nyashanu. Chris, I'm not sure you are the timekeeper. Are we still safe?
Yeah, we are done. We are done. No extra time.
No extra time.
Yeah, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. That was our show, Jonga, and I would like to thank Dr. Matthew Nyashanu for joining us today, and we also had Dr. Simba Magaza. Thank you so much. And we had, of course, other guests who are Dr. Zenzo Nkomo, but we couldn't get him on air. And of course, we had Vusumuzi Simanda. Thank you for listening and watching. My name is Chris Gande. Good night, Zimbabwe.
And I'm Jonga Kandemiri, tosangana mune zvimwe zvirongwa zvestudio 7 mwerera zvakanaka vana veZimbabwe.